How goes it?
Not bad. How are you?
All right.
I'm
So this
surprised.
is no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm surprised we're on Zoom.
Yeah, I was gonna use Skype, but the thing is, I have two laptops at my house.
Mm.
One is my personal laptop, one is my work laptop. I've been using my personal laptop more because it's a newer one. And with my old laptop, that's where I torrent my movies from. And I have
Right.
like bootleg software and movies and all that shit.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything legit on there. But for my newer laptop, for work, I do have Microsoft 360,
Uh-huh.
which the work is paying for. So that's signed up through my job. So I have legitimate software here.
Yeah.
So I was gonna do the Skype from here, but I guess Skype teamed up with Microsoft Teams or something. So
Oh.
now, like, because Microsoft has their own version of it, so it's asking me to sign into my work one. And I was like,
Mm.
wait a minute, like, let me just figure out what I'm doing before I start using my work account, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm gonna delay it one more week till I figure this out, but I think
Sure.
Skype might be better because they both record, and from what I remember, Skype doesn't limit you, you know?
Right. Well, that would be handy.
Yeah. So, just we don't really do this. We just start talking. But
Yeah.
this is the voice of Sean Weathers. Just for clarity for new listeners, this is Sean Weathers, and the other voice you're listening to is
Angus Combe.
okay. This is Sean, and
This is Angus.
okay. Hopefully they can get that. So, since we don't have the visuals of ourselves, we should
Yes.
acknowledge who we are. So before we get
Yeah.
too much into
Well,
things.
I sometimes think we should introduce ourselves, but we're rebels, and this is the No Rules Film School after all. So
Yeah, yeah,
we don't have to do it if we don't want to.
exactly. I mean, that sounds like a rule, right?
It
So
does. It's a little too close to a rule.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. We're rebels without causes. That's what we are.
That's right.
If we have an intro, we should put like clip of that into the intro.
Yeah.
Um, what's that famous line that it's not Rebel Without a Cause. It's so Rebel Without a Cause was James Dean, but
Yes.
Marlon Brando did a movie like that too around
Uh,
the same time. And they asked him, and there was a famous line in there. It's like, "Hey, what do you? Oh, fuck!" There's a famous line in there. I can't remember. I don't remember the line. It's not Rebel Without a Cause because that's Dean. I'm gonna have to
yes.
Google this one. I should know it from memory. It's almost cheating to Google something.
It is. It's kind of ruined conversation. We used to sit around going, "What was that movie?" I don't know, and we talk about it for hours. And now people just look it up and go, "Oh, it was that," and the
Yeah.
conversation's over.
And now with Chat GPT, forget it. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
The Wild One, that's the movie, I
Oh
think
yeah.
it was. I
Yes.
just gotta remember what the hell's the famous line in The Wild One. Let me see the taglines for the movie. Streetcar Marlon Brando. Jazz up. No. Maybe if I go in the into the was it quotes? Quotes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me see if I find it in quotes now.
It's famous. It should
Oh,
be
hey
there.
Johnny, what are you rebelling against? What do you got? That's the famous line.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
That would apply to us. Hey, what rules are you guys breaking? What rules you got?
That's perfect.
Exactly. Just got to chop it up and put it in an intro.
Yes.
So, yeah. So you got my my message, right? My DM.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
So Yeah, I mean, the last couple of podcasts haven't done great. I mean, it's still a little bit early for uh the French Connection, but I was thinking that would do really well off the bat, you know?
Yeah,
Because we do seem to have an older skewing audience on YouTube, and that's a very popular older movie. But
yeah,
yeah, we kind of lost our momentum. So that's why I was thinking if we just chop up the podcast a little bit more, that it'll give people more options of segments to pick, you know? Because they may not
yeah,
want to listen to like big chunks. And the
yeah,
more bites of the apple you get, the more chance that someone's gonna find something they like. Because honestly, that's how our most popular shows went. Some of the most popular shows we did were, well, Noirvember did really well for us.
yes,
So we ended up squeezing two. If I knew it was going to do that well, I would have, we should have gotten like
yes,
one every week and got like
yeah,
4 or 5 in. Um, but some of the other ones that did really well were like the ones that we had lots of bite at the apple because we
mhm,
actually just redid the whole podcast multiple times
yeah,
because there were the episodes that we did before we were the No Rooms Full Swoon podcast, and then we just re-uploaded them. Like All About Eve did really well initially, and
yeah,
then I reposted a lot of the videos with the new intros, and the new videos did even better.
yeah,
And same thing with Blaxploitation and a few of the other shows. So
yeah,
the more times you just repackage the same shit, it just somebody will eventually say, you know what, I like that packaging better, even though
yeah,
it's the same old shit. So
yeah. Well, they used to do it with exploitation films, right? Change the title, change the poster, send it back out. Sometimes it's a bigger hit the second or third time.
yeah, drive-in movies too, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
before exploitation was drive-ins, right? Because
yeah,
exploitation really took off in the 70s. Drive-ins
yeah.
really took off in the 60s, maybe.
Yeah, well, I guess drive-ins go back even further, probably to the 40s or something. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess no matter how you look at it, exploitation, we could say those movies in the 30s were kind of exploitation. Those, sex fiend or cocaine
Those
fiends, those kind of.
educational.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, they've both been around a while.
Mm. So you're saying we're sleazeballs? We're just gonna.
Well, that wasn't what I was saying, but it might have been what I was conveying
Mm.
accidentally.
Mm. Okay. Let's get this train back on the tracks.
All right.
Okay, so we did the polls. I'm not sure how long I want to stick with the polls. I'm not sure like how much they're going to help the viewership. I guess we'll
Yeah,
find out with this one because we did multiple polls for this one movie.
true.
So if we're going to feel any difference, any boost from the polls, we did 2 polls to get to
Yes.
this one. So I liked all of those movies. That's why I picked them because I'm like, let me pick 8 movies and I'm just going to love. I don't care what anyone picks. I'm gonna love all these movies. The only one I wasn't as that's still great, Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh
It
yeah.
wasn't. It was good, but it's not as much as I love the others. But I loved all 8 of the movies we ended up putting on the poll.
Yeah.
Do you remember them off the bat? It was The Nightmare Before Christmas, um,
Um, Christmas Vacation,
Christmas Vacation,
Home
uh,
Alone,
Home Alone,
um,
um,
Meet Me in St. Louis.
Meet Me in St. Louis, which won on YouTube because again we have an older skewing audience.
Yeah.
Um, I could just look at these polls. I'm not doing well today. Like I
Well,
need visual reference for everything I'm doing.
well, it's the thing about the No Rules Film School. It's very late at night when it's in session, so it's been
That's true.
a
That's
long
true.
day.
That's true. Yeah. So all right, so I have the polls in front of me. So it was Home Alone, Die Hard, Muppet Christmas, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That was the second poll or the third
Hmm.
poll. Because there was a runoff with the first 2 polls, and then there was
Right.
this poll here to get the final winner. Because I think initially we were thinking about doing 2, so that's why I made 2 separate polls. Then we decided we do one, so we just put the top 4 vote getters into the second poll. Die Hard, I think, won pretty easily.
Yeah.
Bad Santa, Batman Returns, Nightmare Before Christmas, and Me in St. Louis were the other four that didn't make it to the final four. But yeah, those were the 8 movies. Die Hard won. And it's funny, like, I guess maybe Batman Returns would be the only other movie that's kind of like a borderline Christmas movie. But that's always been kind of a debate. Is Die Hard a true Christmas movie? Where do you stand on that? What side of the fence are you
on? Well, I think I would say it is a Christmas movie. I may be more broad-minded about this kind of thing, but it sort of depends on how you define Christmas movies. But I think, you know, it's clearly set on Christmas Eve and presumably on Christmas once it gets late at night, passes midnight. You know, so it's certainly set at that time, and there's lots of references to Christmas. People talk about Christmas. There's a Christmas party going on. I mean, it feels very much like it's a Christmas movie. But, you know, if you're going to define Christmas movies as having, you know, to be really about the true meaning of Christmas or something like that, then maybe it doesn't quite achieve that. But for my taste, though, I would say, yeah, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, I mean, then it asks the question, what is a Christmas movie? Is it a movie that's released during Christmas time? Is it a movie where in the world of the movie, Christmas is happening? Is it a movie that deals with religion? It's obviously, you know, Christianity, Christmas. Is it a movie that deals with family or going back home? Things that people do around Christmas time. So there are a few different ways to look at it. But this movie, I mean, with that question in mind and then watching it, it does take place during Christmas. It does revolve around family in a way, even though family is not on screen for most of the movie. And it does end with a Christmas song as well. So, and they do play when the terrorists slash thieves slash assassins, whatever they are, they're just generic bad guys. When they finally get their generic thing that they want and they get into the safe, there is like a Christmas song playing, I think.
Well, I think
when the safe finally opens, I think. So
well, I think definitely, you know, there's Christmas music, there's, you know, it feels like Christmas, and it is about a guy who is traveling to be with his family, like a lot of Christmas stories, and a lot of people in real life, you know, experience that. They travel, they go home for Christmas. I mean, it kind of feels right.
Yeah, and I guess the final test would be, is this a movie you can watch with your family? So it does have a little bit of that 80s, like in the 80s you could watch this with your family. Today, could you watch it with your family? Because there is the obligatory nude scene, you know, there is the drug scene. Again, drugs, nudity, not a big deal in 80s movies. Almost a prerequisite, you know, to see some boobs bouncing around at some point, to see someone snorting coke or doing something like that. So, I mean, those are the only questionable things. But aside from that, there are a few references that's like, you probably get canceled for mentioning that stuff. But I think overall, like, I would feel safe watching this with my family.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a violent movie. There is blood in it. And I think it might have been rated R here when it came out.
I would think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, you wouldn't have been able to take your family to the theater at that time. I mean, little kids, you know. But yeah, I think especially today, you know, violence, it's gotten a lot worse, I guess, than what we see in this movie. It's not completely over the top gruesome. So, yeah, I think you probably
could you play this with the family sitting around the tree, with the kids running around and stuff? That's the question, because again, there are sensitivity things culturally, and there is the nudity, and there
Yeah.
is the swearing and the deaths and the violence and stereotypes and trigger points for people. So
Yeah.
it's not 100% clear cut, but I think we can say mostly it's
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's sort of an individual call, I guess, for each person, each family, you know, whether they think it's suitable. But I don't think I would have a big problem with it.
mhm, yeah. All right, so we did not end that debate, but we did explore the debate.
Yes.
Okay, so this is one of those rare movies that audiences and fans love equally as much. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's 94 by the critics and it's 94 by the fans. So it's an exact match of both sides loving it equally as much, but it is an older film. Like newer
Yeah.
films, you may get over thousands or thousands of reviews. So it's only 87 reviews to go on. So it's not
Right.
exactly a huge sample. But I think universally, it's viewed as a great film. Um, I'm not someone who's a big fan of action films. Most of the action films, I like them ironically. Like, this is so stupid, it's good. Kind of like the Schwarzenegger stuff and things like that. But this is the type of action film I get into. For me, this is probably as good as an action film can get for my taste because it has elements that you don't find in typical action movies. Good callbacks, good writing, not a lot of wasted motion. Everything pays off. A superfluous conversation about being on an airplane and taking off your shoes is a major plot point later on in the film.
Hmm.
You know, you have these nameless, faceless henchmen, but you get this funny scene where one of them is standing over the candy bars and he's just looking down and looking back up and then starts eating the candy bars. And suddenly, you're like, that's the candy bar guy. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think he has any lines, but he's the candy bar guy. But they're just
Yeah.
little things that there's a little bit of care in there where it's just like, all right, everything matters. And we're going to give everyone their little moments. And, you know, everything kind of pays off at the end. All the side characters get their little arcs. Sometimes it's a little much. Like they really want you to like John McClane. Like they really want you to like him. But like anyone who opposes him is a complete asshole jerk, and then you just automatically hate him. It's just like he's the only smart person in the room. They really make you root for him. And then, you know, it gets a little melodramatic. Of course, you have the cop at the end, where it's like he has his arc where it's just like,
Hmm.
well, I haven't shot anybody, I actually shot a kid, and then he gets this little arc with the music blasting, and
Yeah.
so it's a little heavy-handed. That's the only fault I'll give it. But otherwise, for me, for my taste, I'm not the action connoisseur. I'm not a good judge on action films. But for me, well deserved 94% and well deserved by its reputation. And I would say it is not overrated at any point.
No, I would agree. And, I think I probably was a little more of an action movie fan, particularly in the old days. And this movie qualifies as the old days for me. Um, I think as they got bigger and bigger, and there's a lot of CGI and stuff like that, I don't find them as interesting. But a movie like this, it's pretty much real stunts, it's real action, and it is smartly written, as you said. It's really well put together. It's not just one action scene after another. It's actually got a lot of story, and it's got a lot of characters, and it does have real human emotion. And I think it's masterful in terms of how it's constructed. I think there, as you said, the thing about taking your shoes off and rubbing your feet in the carpet, you think that's kind of nothing, but it becomes very important. And almost everything you hear has some significance later on. It's just so well constructed. Every piece of this is carefully put together. And I do agree that, particularly now, looking at it, it feels almost too perfect. the pieces come together a little too well. But I think when I first saw it, it just worked, you know, and I just didn't question it at all. And it's a movie, every time I watch it, I just enjoy it thoroughly. And I'm amazed at how good it really is, how well done it is, every aspect of it. So I would say it's not overrated. And you know, it's certainly a movie I can watch over and over again, and I never get tired of it.
Yeah, and it's also interesting how it differs, and it's similar to the last movie we did, also a cop movie, The French Connection, where The French Connection was so steeped in reality. Minimal music, improvised dialogue, gritty, actors wearing no makeup, actual police procedures. It felt like reality. It felt like a documentary. It felt like you were watching Cops, the TV show. It felt so real. You felt dirty watching it. You're in the alleys and the you're seeing the drugs, actual how they test drugs, and they claim they even use real drugs and did a real drug test. I just movie with so much authenticity, and it doesn't manipulate you in any way. It's just, this is it. You view it how you want to. This is not an anti-hero. This cop is a racist bigot. He's not a great person. He just happens to be on our side of the law. But again, he sleeps with hookers. I'm sure they probably tamed down a lot of his negative attributes, because he was literally on set dictating to them how things should play out, and he was part of the writing of the book as well. So 100% authentic, doesn't manipulate you in any way. Great film that deals with cops, and it follows that whole formula. Here you have another great movie that's the exact opposite in execution. It does nothing but manipulate you. There's music cues everywhere. It doesn't give you a chance to think for yourself. The movie is constantly thinking for you. If there's any point where you even think about wavering with John McClane, the music will tell you, no, this is the hero. This is the direction we're going in. And every character that opposes him, you hate them, because the movie sets it up that way. Damn you! John McClane is the smartest person in this world. How dare you go against him? Like, it's so manipulative. It's the exact opposite in so many ways, but there are parallels, but they're both still great.
Yeah, and you know, this movie is so perfectly put together, and that includes the action, and you know, it just looks great. The camera is always doing a good thing. It's not, you know, French Connection, it often looks like, oh, the camera just accidentally pointed at this, you know, and it's just kind of very raw and documentary. Like, this isn't like that. This is very slick and well produced. At least I think it is. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of, as you say, it's kind of the opposite in a way. Much slicker and more. It's seemingly carefully put together movie.
Yeah. For my taste, I prefer films executed the way The French Connection was, but I'd be lying if I say this wasn't more entertaining, you know, because it's more of a popcorn movie, not meant to be taken seriously, you know. But yeah, it's just, you know, it just shows there are multiple ways of getting to a great film, and you can literally do the exact opposite approach and still end up with something that's timeless.
Absolutely.
So this is an instance where you have a TV star having this breakout role and becoming a movie star. And this is the film that turned Bruce Willis into a movie star. Prior to this, he bounced around a lot. I think TV movies, low budget movies, guest appearances on TV shows. And I think he finally hit with a show called Moonlighting with Sybil Shepherd. And I think it was I don't know if it was like a half hour or an hour.
No, it was a full hour. And yeah, I loved that show. That was, at the time, it was considered to be possibly the best written show on TV. guys who normally didn't write for TV, they really wanted to write for it because it was so smart. And the scripts were apparently really long. Like the average TV script, I don't know, at the time was maybe whatever, 45 pages or something. And these were more like 70 pages. There was just so much dialogue. So it was a really great show. And he was great in it because he was funny. You know, it was a very funny, even though it was an hour-long show, and they kind of solved mysteries, and it was kind of a romance, but it was also funny. It was kind of like an
So what were they,
old-fashioned.
detectives, private
Um,
investigators?
yeah, they were private investigators. Well, Sybil Shepherd, she was a former model who had made a lot of money, and then her business manager stole all the money from her. And all that she had left was this detective agency that she had purchased at some point, and she didn't even know about it. So she found out that she owned this detective agency, and she went down there and kind of met the people and decided, well, this is all I've got. I guess I'm going to try to make a go of it. So she starts working at the detective agency, and Bruce Willis played David Addison, who was kind of the lead investigator, the lead private detective, and the two of them, of course, were at odds, and it was like an old-fashioned screwball comedy, you know, a romantic kind of a comedy with them always fighting, but also kind of falling in love. So it was good. It was very good. And that was one of the strange things, you know, like he kind of became a star because of that show. And then he did appear in a couple of other movies that were trying to cash in on his TV persona, but they weren't really that great. I think one of them did well, but, you know, not super well, and the other one I think bombed. And then he did Die Hard, and I remember thinking, what is this? Like, this looks like a serious action movie. Why is Bruce Willis in this? Because he's funny. He's a comedy guy, and I really wasn't sure that I wanted to see this movie. And apparently I wasn't alone, because when they promoted the movie, they didn't want to put his picture on the poster because they thought people wouldn't really understand what it was. But once it became a success, they started to kind of show his face in the advertising. But yeah, I remember thinking, what is Bruce Willis doing in this? Like, why isn't this Arnold Schwarzenegger or somebody like that? But,
I think Arnold Schwarzenegger may have passed on it as well.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it would have been a very different movie if he was in it.
Yes, because Bruce Willis did bring some of his moonlighting persona in the sense of the sense of humor, because there is a sense of humor to this. You know, he is funny in this. It's probably not quite as funny as Moonlighting, and it's a little more serious in a way, but still, he kind of brings that sense of fun to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, when you do think of TV stars that went on to become big movie stars, I mean, there's a lot of people that go back and forth. I guess Denzel Washington was on some doctor show in the 80s.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with it. But I know he was on TV for a while. But yeah. I mean, you get a lot of people going back and forth, but people who were like genuine big stars on both the small and the big screen. Bruce Willis would be at the top of that list. You'd also have Will Smith, of course, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He'd go on to do big things. You have Chris Pratt with Community. He'd go on to do big things. Yeah. George Clooney with ER. He'd go on to do big things. Michael J. Fox with Family Ties. Yeah, Family Ties.
Family Ties, yes.
Johnny Depp with 21 Jump Street.
Yes.
And the list goes on, but I think those are, I mean, also, I think Tom Hanks did Bosom Buddies.
Oh, yeah.
And John Travolta did Welcome Back, Kotter.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of them that went back and forth, but, I mean, those would be the ones that I could think off the top of my head that were huge stars on the small screen that then became huge stars on the big screen. With like two fleshed out careers, you know?
Yes. I think a lot of times when TV stars tried to be movie stars, it didn't really work. You know, like they may have had a little bit of success, but ultimately they were still seen as TV stars, so they would kind of go back to TV. It wouldn't really work. Like Ted Danson, for instance, you know, he's been a very successful TV guy, and he did make some movies, but he didn't really become a big movie star, you know. And there's been lots like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a different criteria. TV acting isn't, I mean, now it's changed because TV, since The Sopranos, changed the standard. Because around the time The Sopranos came out, around that time or shortly after, I mean, Sopranos is one of the greatest dramas ever. It changed television. Around that time, you had Deadwood, you had 6 Feet Under, you had The Wire, and these are some of the greatest TV shows ever made. And they all
Yeah,
came out. And I think after that wave, the standard for TV acting changed. But I think the standard for TV acting prior to that was very low. And then you would see it when you'd see these TV stars in movies where it's just them on the big screen. You're like, ah, you know, that acting isn't that fleshed out. Like it's okay for
no,
like a little sitcom or, you know, some drama. But now that you're just on that screen and we're here in a theater just putting all of our focus on you, you don't really have that presence or that acting chops, you know?
yeah,
But like I said, now I think it's a different world. People go
yeah,
back and forth. TV actors are sometimes better than movie actors, but I think there was that stigma definitely when Willis did it, and when a lot of those actors that we mentioned did it, because the standards were very different.
yeah. I think that things have reversed also in the fact that people used to want to be in movies. And like I said, writers wanted to write movies. They didn't really want to do television. Moonlighting was an exception. But now I think it's almost the reverse, where the best writers are writing for these really good TV shows, where they have a lot more time to develop their stories. Whereas a lot of movies are just very simple, you know, just special effects extravaganzas, and they don't really require the same kind of in-depth writing or even acting, you know, because there's a lot of, you know, a lot of CGI, a lot of special effects, and they're more like event movies or, you know, spectacles. They're not really serious in the same way they used to be.
Hmm. Yeah. So after this, I mean, pretty much, even though this kind of made Bruce Willis like an action star, aside from the sequels to this movie, he didn't really do a lot of successful action after this. The sequels were mainly the most of his success. And his other big success was Look Who's Talking, which was more of a comedy that played against his tough guy image,
Yes.
that a lot of action stars would do. You know, you had Schwarzenegger who do Twins, and Stallone would do like Rhinestone and Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. So he kind of
Yes.
got into that pattern where it's just like, yeah, I'm a tough guy, but I want to show that I can be funny too. And then
Yeah.
you'd have people like Eddie Murphy, funny guys, who want to show, well, hey, I could be a tough guy. It's like, no, Eddie Murphy,
Yeah.
you stick to comedies. You, you, Stallone, Bruce Willis, you stick to action. Yeah, it's like stick in your lane.
Yeah.
Give us movies that you guys are good at making, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then so I think those were his two major franchises. And then he had like some kind of like hit and miss movies in between sequels to those
Yeah.
franchises until he had his comeback in '94 with Pulp Fiction,
Yeah.
which definitely reestablished him. And then he had another comeback, maybe another 4 or 5 years later. I think it was Armageddon, The Sixth Sense,
Yeah.
and uh, what's that other Shyamalan movie? Broken or Unbreakable?
Unbreakable.
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 I
Yeah.
think those were like back to back to back, one year after the other, which was
Yeah.
another kind of renaissance for him. But he throughout that time frame though, he's definitely someone who stayed busy. He'd make like several movies every year. It seemed like the
Yeah.
older he got, the more movies he made per year, and the lower in quality those movies got precipitously. They just got
Yeah. Yeah.
To a point where it's like, man, I could probably get Bruce Willis for one of my movies, you know.
Well, I remember hearing somebody say that, a bad movie with Bruce Willis in it will make more money than a bad movie without Bruce Willis in it. So
Depends
that's
on how
why
much
they.
you're paying Bruce Willis to be in the movie.
Well, I suppose, yeah. And interestingly enough, he apparently got $5 million for doing Die Hard, even though he wasn't really a big movie star yet. That's really a big
Was some of
payday.
that profit sharing in residuals, or did he get it up front?
I think it was a salary. I think they.
That
I don't
sounds
know
like a
why.
lot for a TV star in
It
1988.
does. It really does. But they must have really seen something in him, and it sure paid off for them.
Well, it paid off, but
Yeah.
that's surprising. That's surprising.
I know. Totally.
You know. But yeah, I think now he's suffering from some kind of disease that affects his memory. And
Yeah,
I think his acting days are pretty much over at this point.
that's what I think too. Yeah, it sounds like it's not good.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, it's great to celebrate his peak here.
yeah,
I mean, it's good and bad that you peak early on in your film career, but this definitely made him a star, and
yeah,
we were the better for it.
yeah. And the sequels for the most part were pretty entertaining, and they kept coming. So you
Yeah, I
know,
mean, I think I don't remember part two a lot, but that happens with a lot of part twos that are just
mhm,
the same movie in a different location, like Home Alone 2. I couldn't
yeah,
tell you, I know it's in New York, but it's pretty much like the same beats, just a few changes. Give them what they want a year or two later. Let's just keep
yeah,
the gravy train going. But I think it was part three that was, my second favorite in the franchise because I think that was a little bit freshened up the formula a little bit, and it got back to being a great film again. And then after
yeah,
that, I didn't pay attention to the franchise.
yeah. Well, I think four was pretty good. I think it does get a little insane for the same reasons. I think maybe four or five, whatever. I'm not even sure how many there are, but they start to get into more of that CGI stuff where it doesn't even look real anymore. But yeah, I agree. Part three was quite good, and I actually didn't see part two until years later. I missed that one for some reason, but yeah, part three kind of revitalized it.
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
That's right. Yes.
Um, yeah, and I think it was his character's brother that came back or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right. It's been a long time, but
Han's
yeah,
brother. Yeah.
yeah,
But I just
yeah,
remember like this formula, it was just imitated so much, not just with the sequels, but yet like the Speed movies and so many other generic direct to video movies. Now they'd be direct to VOD, but a lot of direct to
yes,
video movies that just copied this formula. You had certain
yeah,
cop movie formulas that were just repeated ad nauseum, over and over again. Even one we watched, Samurai Cop, the fish out
yeah,
of water cop. Um, so you had, I think the three major ones are the ones that pop in my head is the Eddie Murphy ones, where you got the fish out of water, and he's teaming up with the grizzled, I do things by the book, I'm a great cop. But wait a minute, this fish out of water guy, like I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. But wait a minute, his tactics are pretty good. Maybe if we did it his way, we'd solve this case. And you have that with a lot of Eddie Murphy movies, including
yeah,
the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, 48 Hours franchise. And
yeah,
then you had Chris Tucker, who did a bunch of movies like that as well, with
yeah,
Rush Hour and things like that, and
yeah,
tons of other movies that we could just list off. And then you had the Lethal Weapon formula of the insane, brash, you know, I don't follow the rules. I'm a loose cannon. Nobody wants to be my partner with the I'm 2 weeks away from retirement,
yes,
2 weeks away from retirement guy, which
yeah,
is kind of like Samurai Cop and other films. In Lethal Weapon, I think Danny Glover lives throughout the franchise, but a formula for
Yes.
those movies would be the one that's about to retire gets killed, and the loose cannon goes out to avenge his partner. But you had that whole formula, and then of course you had the John McClane formula, the everyman guy who's in
Yeah.
over his head, but it turns out he's the smartest person in the room, and this every
Yes.
guy is going to figure it out, and these authority figures are saying, "No, stay out of it. We'll take care of it." You idiots, man! I'm the only one who can do this. Which
Yeah.
works with Bruce Willis, but when you talk about Keanu Reeves, it just becomes a parody of itself. Speed was a fun movie, maybe even
Yeah.
a movie we can touch base on at some point on the podcast. But
Yeah.
it is hilarious for Keanu Reeves to play the Bruce Willis role of the smartest man in the room. It's like, no, dude, we can't slow down, man.
Yeah. I always thought Keanu Reeves was at his best when he was playing, Bill and Ted and that kind of thing. Parenthood, where he's the surfer dude. That's where he's kind of in his element, I think. So trivia first.
Yes, I will not look. I have not looked at the trivia page for IMDb, and I have not Googled anything. My hands are here.
Okay.
Let me see if I can figure out any of this trivia without any help.
You mean you want me to question you?
Maybe question me on a couple, and then you could just state the others.
Okay.
I'll just jump in if I can figure out any of the trivia.
All right. Well, we'll see how this goes. Die Hard was actually based on a book. Do you know the name of the book that it was based on?
I'm not off to a good start.
Okay, the book was called Nothing Lasts Forever. And interestingly enough, the rights to that book were owned by another famous actor originally.
Schwarzenegger?
No, it wasn't Schwarzenegger. It was an actor who planned to star in the film around the early 1980s.
Hang on, let me see. The early 80s. So it wouldn't have been an action star because they came into mid to late 80s, right? So it would have been like a regular actor. Lee Marvin?
No, but that's not far off in a way.
It's not Clint Eastwood.
It is. Clint
No
Eastwood.
way!
Yeah, Clint Eastwood originally owned the rights, and I guess he decided not to do it. The book is by a guy named Roderick Thorp. I won't ask you that because
No,
I've never heard of him. But apparently, though, it is a sequel to another book, which was also made into a movie much earlier. Do you have any guess as to what
Is
movie?
it a popular movie that I would get or no?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a movie I know. I don't think it's like a huge iconic film. It's from 1968.
No, I wouldn't know.
Okay, it's called The Detective, and it starred Frank Sinatra.
Oh,
So, it's a
I
movie
wouldn't
I
have gotten
definitely...
that.
No. So this is apparently a sequel to that, which is really interesting.
Where's the box set of that coming out? The Detective and Die Hard box set.
Well, yeah, it's like, Manhunter, and then they made Silence of the Lambs later, and, now they're kind of put them together in a way. So the book is apparently quite similar to the movie in a lot of ways. There's a lot of exactly the same stuff in there. But there are a couple of differences. One is that the bad guys actually are terrorists in the book. So they're not actually thieves. That kind of a twist that exists in Die Hard that is not part of the book. And it maybe
I think I did hear the director say he wanted to bring humor into it, and you couldn't do that if they were terrorists. So I think that's why he wanted to make them thieves.
Yeah, you're right. John McTiernan, he didn't want them to be terrorists. He thought that was too mean, maybe too negative, and so he didn't want the politics of that. So he thought if they're just thieves and they're after money, it would be more suitable as summer entertainment. It would just be a fun kind of movie. I actually thought it was a brilliant twist, you know, because you kind of think they're terrorists, and then it's like, oh, wait,
It's convoluted, though. It's convoluted.
Yeah.
You know,
It is a little, but that's something that I do think was ripped off by other movies. They would kind of pull that same idea.
because they didn't even
twist.
think about what made the movie work. They just think, I want my own Die Hard, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what Die Hard did. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. So I think the ending of the book might be a little more negative as well, or a little not quite as feel good as the movie. But anyway,
You mean there isn't a cop who decided he didn't want to be on the streets anymore and ate Twinkies, and then at the end killed a terrorist / assassin / bank robber at the end?
I suspect not. I haven't actually read the book, but I don't think that's in there. No. But I think that I think somebody dies at the end who maybe lives in the movie, but I'm not 100% sure exactly what happens there. So Alan Rickman, this was really his first movie. He had done some TV and some theater.
Now he's known for the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah, and apparently he didn't actually want to do this movie. He was going to turn it down. He basically didn't want to play a villain. He didn't think that was a good idea. But his agents talked him into it, and of course it was in some ways the best thing that happened to him, because it made him a huge iconic star. But it did kind of typecast him. He did play a lot of villains after that. So
it gave him a career.
It did, yeah, it did, and I don't think he regretted it. But that's interesting. So the location that Die Hard takes place in, the Nagatomi Plaza, as they call it, that's not a real place. It's a fictional place. Do you know what the real building actually is, where they shot that?
Trump Tower. I'm just joking. No, I have no idea.
It was actually the headquarters of 20th Century Studios.
Oh.
So the studio were basically using their own building for this.
That's one way to save money.
Yeah. Well, in fact, they apparently charged themselves rent for that. So you know how Hollywood likes
funny accounting.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we didn't make any money. We charged ourselves money.
We paid a lot of rent and we didn't make it back, I'm afraid. But no, one reason they did that is so they didn't need permission, and they didn't have to worry about all the stunts and all the, shooting and everything, and they
all the
damage
insurance.
Yeah. So they were just using their own building, and much like in the movie, some of it was not really in use yet. It was unoccupied. They were still kind of building it, I guess. But there were people working on some floors, and apparently they had to stop shooting, like gun shooting during the day, because it was disturbing the people who were working in the building too much. So they had to shoot that stuff at night.
I like the way you described that. Gun shooting.
Shooting. Well, I said they had to stop shooting.
We're gun shooting.
Yeah. So they were shooting, and it was gun shooting. Yeah. Anyway, you know what I meant there. So
a bigger person would have let that go, but I'm not a bigger person.
No. And the writer, he actually got to tour the building, and he kind of tailored the script to the location,
his surroundings.
Yeah, taking advantage of the physical stuff that was there. So that's clever as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Bruce Willis was fairly exhausted from his schedule working on Moonlighting at the same time as he was doing this.
That's because he's moonlighting as an action hero.
That's right. And so apparently they sort of had to beef up the roles for the other characters so they could kind of give him a bit of a break. And so that's why characters like Al, Ellis, Argyle,
That's
Um,
interesting because
yeah,
I kind of felt that was a strength of the movie, is
yeah,
that the side characters all got time.
exactly. Yeah, it's a lot more character development. It's a more of a rich world. So that's a case where, yeah, that really worked for them, and other people could learn from that, perhaps. Um, Interestingly, Bruce Willis actually has a permanent injury from this movie. Do you know?
Is it that scar
No,
on
it's
his
not a
shoulder?
scar.
Oh,
It's
but he
not a
saw that
scar.
scar on his shoulder, right? He had a
Maybe.
scar by his chest. I was like, I never
Yeah,
noticed Bruce Willis had a scar before.
yeah. I'm not sure
Um,
that I noticed that.
yeah, yeah. He has a permanent injury from this film.
Yes.
You're not gonna say it's glass in his foot, are you? From walking
No,
around shoeless.
no.
Hang
I'm
on, let
not
me see if I can
gonna.
think of this. Because I saw, I mean, it was clearly he had a stunt double for most of the things he was doing. I would think it would be shoulder related because he was hanging a lot. Is it shoulder related? That'd be my guess.
No, I'm probably being slightly misleading by calling it an injury, but it's actually permanent hearing loss.
Oh, from the explosions.
Well, apparently it was the scene where he's underneath the table and he fires the gun up through the table at the
It was
guy
a
on
real
top of it.
gun?
Well, I guess it's a real gun with blanks. And apparently the blanks were extra loud. Like they really wanted these to be big gunshots. And it might have been okay, except the fact that he was under the table, somehow the sound was amplified
Ricochet?
by that.
Oh, oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And so apparently his left ear has significant permanent hearing loss thanks to that scene in this
Mm.
movie.
No, that's
So,
interesting. It's like in his older movies, he has an earpiece on.
oh,
And
yeah.
some people would review his movies and they'd be like, oh, he has this earpiece on because he's too lazy to memorize his lines. And then they realized he had a hearing thing. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
came from
apparently,
this. That's interesting.
yeah, because they do note that he has worn a hearing aid for years, unbeknownst to most fans. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Some fans
that
caught it though, and they just assumed he was
yeah,
being lazy. He was getting his lines fed to him.
yeah. I actually had to do that once. I was stage managing a show for a friend of mine, and it was very sort of fly by the seat of your pants, and so he didn't know his lines. He wrote it. He wrote the show, but he didn't quite have it memorized. So he had an earpiece in, and I had a microphone, and I would just kind of follow along with the script. And if it looked like he was in danger of getting off track, I would just feed him the line, and nobody knew. It was really seamless. But
I have a quick antidote. I may have told this at some point on this podcast or at some point when we've done reviews together, but I know I've told it several times on different interviews or podcasts. But one of my first acting roles, the first time I directed myself, not my first acting role, first time I directed myself in Hookers in Revolt, I have like two lines. I have a big part in the movie overall, but this was like my first scene. So after I'm like directing everybody and people think I'm obnoxious because yeah, I'm telling them what to do all day and it's a big cast for me, Hookers in Revolt. And then here's my big scene. And I've never smoked a cigar before. I didn't know you're not supposed to inhale it. So I'm inhaling all this cigar smoke. I am so
uh,
fucking lightheaded. And these lights, like I'm used to the lights, but I'm used to being behind the lights, not in front of them.
mhm.
So the lights are blasting down on me. I'm surrounded by the whole cast and crew that I've been bossing around all day. They're just dying for me to fail. And the heat and the smoke and the lightheadedness, I had two lines. We spent like 2 hours trying for me to get my two lines out because it was just so intense. So I could have used an earpiece on that day.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Um, so I already kind of let this slip a bit before, but I'll ask you and see how your memory is. Do you know how much Bruce Willis was paid to be in
Oh, you
Die
just
Hard?
told me that. $5 million.
That's right. It was apparently approved by Fox president Rupert Murdoch.
Oh,
So I don't know. They must have seen him as, this TV star that people were excited about, and They just figured, yeah, he's going to be a star, and they weren't wrong.
They weren't wrong, but that was a risk.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, totally. I'm very surprised to hear that.
I'm surprised it would even take $5 million for him to do it, though, because he's never been picky about what he did at any point in his career. You look at his IMDb page; like every year, he's doing a bunch of different jobs. So it's not like he's like this, like Daniel Day-Lewis, where he's picking like one job every 5 years to do. So.
Yeah. Well, it's probably his agents, like a lot of actors, and I'm sure writers, directors, their agents just do it, and they don't even want to know about it. And I wish I had an agent, because it's really uncomfortable to have to talk about money with people,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you feel that way, if you've ever had to negotiate.
No, I just tell everybody you're either working for free or not working with me.
Yes. But it's always awkward, when people, they want to pay you less money than what you're.
Yeah, I mean, I deal with it. I'm joking. Obviously, I do pay some of my actors, and also like dealing with salaries with at the hotel when I hire people. Phrasing and words matter a lot. You can't imply things. You got to be very clear when you're dealing with money, because people, I mean, you may think you're saying one thing and they interpret it another way. You really got to be careful with the money situation. And you're right, because I mean, you're in a position where you're looking to get paid. I'm in a position where I'm paying people. So I know what it is to be at the other side of someone like you who may thinking, oh, I thought I agreed to this. And I'd be like, no, we didn't agree to that. I say, if this and this happened, that could happen, So you got to be careful, because people who are looking to, this is how they make their living, you got to be sensitive to that and understand, like, they have certain expectations. They're going to interpret certain things you say in certain ways. You got to be clear with people. So I understand how that can be very tricky.
Yeah, and it's not just with money too, but I find you have to be clearer than you would ever think you would need to be when you're telling people what you need from them, because people will misunderstand you, amazingly. Things that you think are so simple, and they will just not get it, and they'll be like, I thought we agreed to this, So I have no shame. I will tell people over and over again, this is what I need you to do, and I'll remind them, because that's the other thing. If you don't send reminders to people, they won't show up. I mean, I'm sure you've probably dealt with this on your films, where people say, oh yeah, I'll be there Saturday, but if you don't remind them on Friday, they're not going to be there on Saturday.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've sent out the work schedule and I've reminded people, like, I didn't know I was working today. I'm like, did you see the schedule? No. I'm like, but there's a reason I make the schedule and I send it out. I just assume I'm working the regular days I always work. I'd be like, no, like I send it out for a reason,
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. I unfortunately I know. So.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's probably enough trivia.
Yeah. I think that was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. I think we should do that again.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, so we're ready to get to this review?
I think so.
Let's just do a quick reset. This is Sean Weathers, and I'm being co-hosted on. Can I finish? Stop talking over me.
Well, I love to interrupt people so much, so sorry.
I know. Listen, people that listen to this podcast know I barely get a word out.
Oh, yeah.
I never go on long tangents. I never interrupt.
Yes.
Yes, this is Sean Weathers, and you're listening to the No Rules Film School podcast. And also the rewind section. If you're listening to this, you could be listening to either segment. And my co-host is
Angus Cole.
Okay. Angus, you want to take it away?
I will. So, we are introduced to John McClane on a plane landing in LA. He's nervous, and we actually see his gun, and he reveals that he's a cop. And he has a big stuffed animal, And, you know, it's kind of clever exposition here, kind of letting us know a little bit about him. And he does hear the story here from the person he's sitting next to about a good thing to do if you're kind of feeling a bit weird after flying is take your shoes off, rub your feet in the carpet. And he thinks it's crazy, but whatever. So we cut to a classy Christmas party at the Nakatomi Corporation. We meet his wife and a bearded dude named Ellis, who appears to be hitting on her. She calls her kids, says she's coming home soon, and they say, "Is Daddy coming home?" And she says, "Well, we'll see. We'll see what Santa and Mommy can do." And she asks the housekeeper if John has called, and she says no. Back at the airport, John gets a limo ride from Argyle, and it's his first time driving a limo. It's also John's first time riding in one. And he rides up front. He's married, and his wife has been in LA for 6 months. We learned this because Argyle is kind of questioning him. And again, it's kind of a clever way that we're learning about the character. It feels very natural. So his wife moved here. He didn't. He's a New York cop, and he just can't leave. They arrive at a high-rise building, and Argyle says he'll wait in case things don't work out with the wife. So this is kind of our intro section. Any thoughts about this?
McClane on a plane, huh?
McClane on a plane.
So yeah, you get a lot of setup here, a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of things that pay off in the end. And some things you think at the time you first watch it or around the few first times you watch it, this is so clever. But then again, you think it's a little contrived too. It's like, you know, maybe they just wanted to have him without shoes. You're like, man, how the hell did we get him shoeless in this movie? Oh, I know, we'll tack on some stupid story at the beginning and people will think it's foreshadowing, you know? So you don't know how much of it is actually clever, how many of it is just like, oh man, how do we figure out to get to this point? Let's just throw some scenes in at the beginning. You never know what they're writing first or what they're writing last. But I mean, it all comes together, so you can't complain too much. From the setting up of the relationships with his family to the driver and different things that pay off. Even the directory when he's coming into the building where he sees the names, because that name directory plays in at the end as well. So there's a lot of little things that if you pay attention to them and you watch the film more than once, which a lot of people do watch this film every time of year around Christmas time, which is why we're doing it, you'll see a lot of that stuff kind of pays off.
Yes, totally. So John goes in and he tells him that he's here to see Holly McClane, but she turns out to be listed as Holly Gennaro on the computer, and John is annoyed by this. She's on the 30th floor. There's a party going on, and apparently they're the last people in the building. So John enters the party, and he seems like he's a bit out of place. He's kind of underdressed, seems a bit like a fish out of water here. And he meets Holly's boss, Takaki, I'm not sure exactly. He sent the limo for John, and he mentions that this building is still under construction. Some floors are under construction. And he takes John to Holly's office. There's a bearded dude named Ellis who's doing coke in Holly's office. And Holly enters, and there's some awkwardness between them. And Ellis says, "Show him the watch." And it turns out she has a Rolex. And John later says that Ellis has his eye on Holly, and Holly says, "Well, that's all right. I have my eye on his private bathroom." And then ultimately, after talking about where he's going to stay, she offers him a chance to stay in her spare bedroom, says the kids would love it. and she says that she's missed him, and he says, but not my name. And they get into a big argument, and there's a lot of tension about their marriage and her career and all that stuff. And we can kind of see what's going on here. And then Mr. Tagaki wants her to make a speech. So she leaves John alone in the office. Any thoughts on this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I love the cokehead character. He's hilarious.
Yes.
And it's funny how like Hollywood is. Like they'll make fun of certain things on in front of the camera, and behind the camera they're all probably doing lines of coke, you know. So
Yeah.
but yeah, more foreshadowing, more setup to things that are going to pay off later. And it's a very efficient movie because there's not a lot of wasted motion. Because you see all this stuff on a rewatch and you realize, oh, like everything ties together. I think you may have mentioned this in the other section. Maybe it ties together a little too neatly, in that it feels a little artificial, that like everything has to be so perfectly put together. But it does pay off, everything we're watching now.
Yeah. And we're learning a lot that we need to know about their relationship. You know, the fact that he maybe wasn't even going to be staying at their place, but she kind of invites him to, and then they wind up in an argument. So we kind of see what the situation is here. Now, meanwhile, outside of the building, we see vehicles arriving, and there's ominous music playing, and some dudes enter the building, and they kill the front desk guy and a security guy, and we get the sense that something big is going down. There's a huge team of people that walks in, including the main baddie, who is named Hans Gruber, but we don't know that yet. There's also a computer expert, and he locks the building down, and then he disables the computers. Lots of other technical stuff going on. It really feels like there's something big happening here. And back upstairs, John does the carpet thing. He takes his shoes off, so he's got bare feet, and he's rubbing his feet in the carpet. And then he tries to call Argyle. They talk briefly, but the phone goes dead because it's been cut by the baddies. And then an elevator full of gunmen arrive at the party upstairs, and the shooting starts, and John is the only one who's kind of not in the main room, and he sort of hides, and he watches, and nobody knows he's there. And he winds up running up the stairs as the gunmen are searching all the offices so they don't find him. And he winds up on one of the floors that's under construction. Any comments on this part?
Yeah, it's interesting that the bad guys are kind of diverse in a way. And like you obviously you have the main core, which I guess is German, but then you also have a black guy and an Asian guy and like a mafioso type guy.
Mm-hmm.
You wish they brought different personalities a little bit. Like they look different, but they all kind of act the same, you know? Like they're all kind of monotone, same personality. They react to things in the same way. And just being in a position where like I manage different people, everyone's different, you know? And, you know, even in movies, like as I'm casting and shooting, you have all these different personalities that bring all these different dynamics to the table. You wish that like the fact that they look diverse, they also acted a little bit more diverse. I think that would have added another layer to things. But I mean, it's understandable. They're not the main characters, you know, it's all about John. But, you know, you think about this same director directed The Predator the year before. And The Predator also had an ensemble cast. But the ensemble cast were so colorful, they were all so different that added a little bit to the movie. You know, obviously the ensemble of good guys being killed by the Predator, the bad guy. This is kind of the inverse of that, in that the ensemble is the bad guys being killed by the good guy. But again, you wish that he would have brought some of that Predator stuff to this, and there would have been more personality with the terrorists / robbers / assassins.
Yeah, Well, somebody once told me that some experts had figured out that audiences are only able to handle about 12 different characters.
Mm.
So you shouldn't have more than 12. And so in a case like this, I feel like the gang of bad guys are like one character. You know,
Mm.
they're all one. Now maybe
They
Hans
feel like
Gruber,
one. They feel like
they,
one.
they do. So we get that. Oh, that's them. You know, so they're taking up one of those 12 slots, and then meanwhile we've got all these other people. You know, because there are quite a few side characters that we meet along the way.
That makes
So
sense. It's maybe
yeah,
too much for
so
the
you
brain
know,
to process for a
yeah,
2 hour movie.
yeah. So that might be part of the thinking there, but I know what you mean. Yeah, a lot of those guys we don't really get to know. There's a couple that are a little more, but most of them
And
not
they look
really.
colorful. You have the black guy who's, the wise ass
Hmm.
technical guy. If he was
Yeah,
like, hey man, you guys are killing people. No, I didn't sign up for this. Yeah. Something like that. Like, why is he like suddenly like an assassin too? It's like,
yeah,
you have the Asian guy. Maybe if he had a hard time communicating with them, maybe English isn't his first language. Something little dynamics like that would have been interesting, but you make a good point.
yeah,
There are
yeah,
a lot of supporting characters, so
yeah, yeah. That could have been the thinking. So Hans addresses the hostages in the office, and he claims that they are there to teach the Nakatomi Corporation a lesson for their bad practices. And he wants the leader, and he reads out the guy's history, and eventually he steps forward, and they take him away. And that's Tagagi. Um, so John watches, and the bad guys take Tagagi to a private place where they look at models of various corporate projects, and they question him. And they want the security codes for the computers. He tries to tell them it's no good, but they admit that they want to get the 6 million or 600 million in bearer bonds that are locked in the vault. So this is interesting to me because I always remember this as kind of a big twist that you don't find out until the end, but they tell us right at the beginning here that we are after this money and we are not really terrorists. Like this is all a cover. So they make that pretty clear. And I feel that the other ripoffs don't, and they kind of leave it as a big surprise at the end of the movie. Um, so it's kind of cool that they reveal it now, and it's in a way it's like that Hitchcock thing where you tell people the bomb is under the table, and then they're more in suspense than if they don't know the bomb is there, and then suddenly it blows up. Um, so we know what's going on now, and nobody else does. Um, so there apparently are 7 levels of security to this system, and he says they're never going to get through them all. So Hans says, well, then there's no reason to not give us the codes. But he still says no. So they kill him. And John witnesses this. Any thoughts at this point?
yeah, like I mentioned before, if the killing would have affected some of the bad guys differently, that would have been interesting. They chose to pass on that. But and again, like maybe if the Asian guy in the group helped them communicate, differently or something, like I'll talk to him in his native tongue or something like that. I think that would have been interesting. But as far as the money thing you mentioned, I think what throws people off is that John's wife mentions, "Oh, you guys were just here for the money," at the end of the film. So maybe
Yes.
someone not paying attention may not realize that they already established that early on in the film. Because it's like you said, the Hitchcock thing, where it's revealed to us, but not to the other characters. So
Mm-hmm.
mystery is something that we don't know.
Yeah.
Suspense is something that we know, but the other characters don't. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
Hitchcock thing. We know it, but the characters in the movie don't know it's about the money. So she makes
Hmm.
that discovery towards the end, but we kind of know it now that they're just here for the money.
Yeah, that's right. And even
And
John
if he
is.
saved it to, and it, sorry to interrupt, but
No,
if he
that's all right.
say, if they saved the twist to the end, that would defeat the whole purpose of changing the plot of the book because they kind of want you to know they're not
Yes.
terrorists. That was the whole point of the
Yes.
change. So saving it to the
Yeah.
end defeats the purpose of changing their motives.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. And even John, who you think might know, but he doesn't, because he sees them shoot the guy, but he can't really hear what they're saying. So he doesn't really get that until the end of the movie as well. But he winds up making a noise. I guess he's a little freaked out seeing this brutal murder. And the thugs kind of go looking for him. They don't know what caused the noise, and they don't find him. John hopes that Argyle will hear the shots and call the police, but nope. Argyle's busy listening to music in the limo, doesn't know what's going on. So the baddies do some more technical stuff, and they say that it'll take 30 minutes to break the code, and then 2 to 2.5 hours to get through the mechanical stuff. And then the seventh lock, or the seventh layer of security, is sort of out of their hands. They can't do anything about it. It's an electromagnetic seal. It can't be cut locally. And Hans says, don't worry about it. Just trust me. So John is freaked out. And he's kind of down on himself that he didn't try to stop this murder. Why didn't he do something? But he realizes if he did, he'd be dead. And then he gets an idea. He pulls a fire alarm, and he thinks this is gonna do the trick. But of course, they call and they cancel the fire truck. And John kind of watches from a high up window, and he sees the truck stop and turn around. And then a gunman finds him because he's pulled the fire alarm. And he says, I promise I won't hurt you. But then he winds up shooting, so it's not very believable. And they get into a fight, and he says, "You're a policeman. You can't kill me. You have to follow the rules." And John kind of makes a joke about that and says, "Well, that's what my captain tells me." So they get into a big fight, and John ultimately kills him. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, they have to make our good guy look good, right? So you can't just shoot him like Dirty Harry or, whatever that Charles Bronson character is in Death Wish.
Yes.
He has to, so he has to accidentally kill him. Either way, he has to die, but he has to die in a way that doesn't make our good guy look bad. So they tussle, and he accidentally breaks his neck as they fall. 80s movies, man. You spot the stunt double a mile away. So it's like stunt double, real actor, stunt double, real actor. These movies weren't made to have the resolution that we watch them at now. But
that's true.
Good action. Good pacing to the movie so far. No complaints.
Yeah. So the bad guys break the first access code, and John collects useful stuff from this dead thug, and he tries his shoes on, but they're too small. So he's still in bare feet.
Which is weird, because the guy's like a foot taller than him.
Yeah, exactly.
You figure he said the shoes are too big.
Yeah. And it's interesting that he doesn't really try on any other shoes after this, because he kills other people. But he really only tries on this first pair to give us the idea that, he can't.
Yeah, they're just revisiting the plot point. Don't forget he doesn't have shoes on.
Exactly, yeah. So he puts the dead body in the elevator and sends it to the party with a note. And he gets on top of the elevator and rides it so they can't see him. And Hans talks to the hostages, and he tells them that he's killed Takagi. And Holly's very disturbed to hear this. And then the body with the note arrives on the elevator, and the note says, "Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho." And John listens to them from the top of the elevator, and he kind of learns some things. He hears some names, and, go tell Carl that his brother's dead, and this kind of thing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. One is, they had to get around the fact that he's by himself, and this doesn't have the tone of the movie for voiceover, so he does a lot of talking to himself. So the one-liners, generally you tell the one-liners to other people, kind of tells
Yeah.
the one-liners to himself, which is kind of weird. It's like
Yeah.
generally the clever one-liners you want to, you're sharing that with someone else. So I found
Yeah.
that kind of funny, and also, he has a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yes.
Now I have Machine Gun Ho Ho Ho. It kind of lets you know the tone of the movie and the type of hero that we're following.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And I kind of love this moment. This is kind of like an action movie moment, I guess, where he's kind of like taunting the bad guys. Now I have a machine gun. It's just there's something about that moment. I think I probably thought that was pretty cool when I was
Yeah, it's great.
young.
It's great.
So Carl.
Those are all your thoughts on that scene, right?
Yes.
All right, let's just pause there. We just have like a minute and a half.
Okay.
So we'll come back and wrap up on the next one.
Hello.
Dude, I'm sorry, man. How long was I out for? Because I was like 10 minutes. Let me just lay down for a minute.
Yeah.
And then I woke up. I'm like, I fell asleep.
Yeah, well, I think the 10-minute break turned into like 40 minutes or something like that.
Oh, thank God it wasn't longer.
Yeah.
When I woke up, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? What happened?
Yeah, I wondered if that might have happened. I almost said something like, "Are you sleeping in the back of the classroom again?" But yeah, that's the problem.
Sorry, man. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
This is why I gotta get the Skype. 10 minutes.
Yeah. True enough. So you want to go for it and see if we can get this thing done?
Yeah, I'm well rested now.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll just jump in then.
Yeah.
Okay. So Carl wants to kill John, but Hans says, stick to the plan for now, kill him later. Holly figures out that John is behind this, and Alice gets annoyed and worried about that. John goes up to the roof, and he tries to use a walkie-talkie to call for help. Hans and his thugs can hear it, and he sends Carl to the roof. Now, the emergency people that John calls are morons, and they keep telling him this is only for emergencies. He says this is an emergency, and they even hear the shooting start as Carl tries to kill John on the roof. So they decide, well, let's send a black and white to do a drive-by. And this is where we meet our cop buddy, or soon to be our cop buddy, Al, who's buying junk food, and he gets the call to investigate the building. Now, there's a major gunfight. There's a chase. The baddies are trying to kill John, and he tries to survive. And eventually, Hans orders them to just shut John in the elevator and leave him, because the cops are coming and they can't have gunshots and stuff like that. So, but Carl is obsessed, and he kind of continues the cat and mouse in the elevator shaft, and there's lots of suspense. And Al, the cop, finally arrives in front of the building, and he doesn't see any sign of trouble. He goes to the front door, he talks to the fake front desk guy, and John, who can see this through the window from way upstairs, he tries to break the window to signal the cop, but the cop is oblivious to that, and the baddies are trying to stop John, and there's a gunfight, and the cop can't hear any of that stuff, so John winds up killing them. And then, unfortunately, Al, the cop, leaves the building, and he gets back in his car, and he says over the radio, everything here is okay. And then suddenly a dead body lands on his hood. And then the bad guys start shooting at him, and he has to throw the car in reverse and back away at high speed while radioing for help. He crashes, but he is safe. Any comments on this?
Yeah, I mean, our poor hero. Everyone's a bunch of idiots except him.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is just more of, manipulation with the movie, trying to get you like emotionally invested as much as possible with John. Everyone
Yeah.
that John tries to go for help, they're all stupid. Only John is smart. Um, so obviously we talked about, in a previous section, the similarities between this and French Connection. There's some parallels, the whole cat and mouse thing that's going on. But one of the major differences is French Connection very plausible. This movie is like a cartoon, how implausible it is. And one of the most implausible scenes is while he's in the elevator. But I don't know what is that called?
The
Space shaft.
Yeah.
The elevator shaft.
Yeah.
Okay. Where he's hanging from the gun strap.
Oh yeah.
And then he slips, and then as he's falling, he catches himself on the side. It's like, dude, come on. Like, even Schwarzenegger and Stallone with their like pumped up steroid arms aren't able to like do the stuff like that. And this everyman is going to be able to do that. And then you obviously have the most famous shot of the film while he's going through the vent.
Yes.
And then he lights up the lighter, and he's telling himself all the one-liners that he has to tell himself so we can hear them. So, obviously, very famous shot, and it's been parodied a lot, and experts have dissected into, well, no building would have a shaft that big or a vent that big, and blah blah blah. But it's an iconic clip from the movie.
Yes.
Often parodied. And more of the same, good, interesting stuff you like about it. You're seeing a lot more of. The flaws, they are what they are, but they do stick out a lot in this section as well.
Yeah. So a bunch more cops arrive after getting this call, and John talks to Hans over the radio for the first time. And Hans is a little thrown. He tries to find out who John is, and John has some fun with him. And there's a lot of witty repartee here. He asks him if he's another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks he's John Wayne. And he says, I've always been kind of partial to Roy Rogers. And then Hans says, do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy? And he says one of the most famous lines from the movie, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah. Does he have a chance? He's already killed half your crew. Does he have a chance? How many more people does he have to kill in your crew before you realize he's got a pretty good shot,
Yeah, well, he's an overconfident bad guy.
I guess. And then it's also confusing. Like, maybe you can explain this to me. So they do care that the cops are there, but then they don't care that the cops are there. Like 10 minutes later, it's like, oh, great. Everything's going according to plan. All the cops are here. Wait a minute. Like 10 minutes ago, you were doing everything you could to get rid of the cops,
Yeah, well, he actually says, well, it's an inconvenient timing issue, and that's all. Everybody stay calm. Because they knew the cops would come eventually. They just didn't want it to be that soon. So it's a little inconvenient, but it'll be okay.
Well, what did they accomplish in between, oh shit, the cops are here, to yes, the cops are here? Like, what did they accomplish in between that time frame?
I don't know.
Well, you wrote this thing, didn't you?
Yeah.
I want answers, damn it.
So this is where we get a kind of a new character introduced, a reporter who wants to get in on this story, and he really comes across as an asshole pretty much right away. And meanwhile, Hans finds out that John has the detonators, and a cop, well, Sergeant Al Powell, our buddy, tries to reach John over the radio, and Hans hears it, And John is very careful. He can't identify himself, but he starts giving them information that they're going to need. He tells them how many hostages, how many bad guys, etc. Call me Roy. And the superior officer who's there is another asshole who doesn't believe Al or Roy. And his name's Dwayne. And against all of the advice of Al, he decides he's going to send some guys into the building. And he turns on big spotlights, and John sees it. He doesn't like it either. He thinks this is a terrible idea. And at this time, Argyle, who's still in his car down in the parking garage, he figures out what's going on because the news media is now there. And he tries to leave, but all the exits are blocked, so he's stuck inside the building. So the baddies wind up shooting out the lights, and they also shoot some of the cops who are trying to come in. And then they use a rocket launcher to blast a big armored vehicle as it's approaching. And they even blast it a second time, which really upsets John. And all in all, it's a big disaster for the police. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, so many assholes in this movie.
Absolutely.
Like, man, like, why, is there anyone else who understands that John's a good guy? Oh, we do. Yeah, that makes us root for him more.
Well,
a lot of manipulation.
Us and Al, I think Al understands what's going on.
Yes.
I think he's the one guy who really understands.
Yeah. Us and Al are the only ones on John's side. Poor John.
That's right.
Dear John. Yeah, but more of the same. Interesting stuff. Again, I don't get why. No, the cops are here. To yes, the cops are here. I don't understand that whole dynamic. And you do have the Asian guy. Doesn't really say anything. Doesn't really do anything. Don't really know why an Asian guy is with a bunch of Swedes or Germans. But he has his famous scene here. The chocolate. Looks up, looks down. Next time we see him, he's eating a bunch of chocolate bars.
Yes, and he's a very recognizable character actor who I think played bad guys in a lot of movies, actually, in the 80s.
He's usually had fight scenes in the movies he's been in, though.
Yeah, true. He's a good fighter.
At a minimum, he's like a stuntman or something, I think.
Yeah, that could be. So John sends some C4 down the elevator shaft and causes a major explosion. Hans is shocked. The reporter is loving it. And the TV news identifies Hans Gruber, and they say that he was actually kicked out of the terrorist group that he was supposedly a part of. John calls Al, and the deputy chief of police, Dwayne, talks to John, and he's mad, and he says, "We don't want your help," and he tells John off, and then John kind of tells him off and says, "Give the phone back to the other guy," and Al says, "John, how are you feeling?" And he says, "Pretty fucking unappreciated, Al." And meanwhile, inside the building, Ellis tries to talk to Hans and offers to give him the guy upstairs who's fucking things up. And John and Al talk over the radio, and they get to know each other. They talk about their kids and stuff like that. And then Hans suddenly cuts in, and he now knows who John is. And he puts Ellis on the phone to talk John down. And Ellis is smart enough to lie and say that he and John are old friends, so he doesn't out Holly. And he says they want the detonators, or they will kill him, meaning Ellis. And John tries to help Ellis by saying, "Hey, we don't really know each other, tell him the truth here." But Ellis winds up getting killed. And then Dwayne, the asshole cop, blames John for Ellis's death. And Al, the smart cop, tells Dwayne off and tries to make him see reason. Any thoughts about this?
Yeah, that asshole. He had the nerve to say it's, well, John might as well just kill him himself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're in the heart of the film, right? So, a lot
Yeah.
of these sections that you're bringing up, my opinion is going to be the same thing because
Yeah.
these are the scenes why you watched a movie. These are
Yeah.
the scenes why they did all that setup at the beginning. It's all the action, it's all the back
Yes.
and forth. Our lone
Yes.
hero, like, it's him doing action stuff. People who don't appreciate him, people who thinks he's the real problem. Him doing action stuff, rinse, wash, repeat, throwing a few one-liners that he says to himself. It's it's the reason if you're gonna watch this movie, why you're watching it, and it's probably the better part of the film as far as
Yeah.
entertainment value goes.
Yeah. Very, very exciting and entertaining stuff. And Hans calls Dwayne and he makes some ridiculous demands. He wants him to release prisoners all over the world. It's clearly designed to be an impossible task that will take a long time. The FBI arrives on the scene, Johnson and Johnson. Dwayne says, "I'm in charge here," and Johnson says, "Not anymore." And this is actually one of the most interesting moments in the movie where Hans accidentally comes face to face with John. And he pretends to be a scared office employee who thinks John is a terrorist who's going to kill him. They talk, and it's actually quite a good suspense scene. Hans sees that John has no shoes. John gives Hans, or Clay as he calls himself, he gets the name off of the address board on the wall. He gives him a gun. And Hans winds up making a call in German, and then he points the gun at John. He tries to shoot John, but there's no bullets in the gun. So John actually knew or suspected Hans on some level. And then Carl shows up and starts shooting. Hans tells him to shoot the glass, and he does. And John is now in barefoot hell. Any comments?
Yeah. One of the most parodied scenes in action movies you're ever going to find. Who's in charge here? I am. Not anymore, you're not.
Yes.
Obviously, the actual scene is not anymore, but it's been parodied like not anymore, you're not. So,
Yeah.
so it's kind of funny seeing that scene, just knowing how many times you've seen that scene in other movies, and
Yeah.
obviously the filmmakers had some fun with it too. Johnson and Johnson for the company, and
Yes.
the black guy being like, "I'm Johnson. This is Johnson. No relation."
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So filmmakers are having fun with it. We're having fun with it. Very entertaining. The cat and mouse game, the chess game that Hans and John are playing with each other. They finally get to play it face to face. They each get leverage on the other. One, John realizes who Hans really is ahead of time, tricks him by giving him the gun with no bullets. Hans gets the drop on John because he sees he's not wearing shoes, shoots up the glass. So, yeah, the dynamic between the two of those are great, as you would want in your top hero and your top villain in an action movie. And so far so good.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reporters figure out who John is, and they get the address of his family in LA. And Hans gets the detonators. John drags himself away, and his feet are bleeding badly. He picks glass out of them in the bathroom. John and Al talk some more about Al specifically being a desk jockey, as he calls himself. And he tells John that he had an accident. He shot a 13-year-old kid, and he couldn't bring himself to ever draw his gun on anyone again. Hans knows the FBI is there, and he knows they will cut the power, which is a textbook response to a terrorist attack. And this is what Hans needs to get into the vault. So it's a brilliant plan, and it works. And they wind up getting those bearer bombs. And then he calls the FBI, and the helicopters are on the way to pick him up as per their demands. John tells Al that he's starting to get a bad feeling, and he asks him to deliver a message to his wife, an apology. And this is a very important character journey moment for John, and it's also a bit moving for the audience. Any thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you get some character development here. They take a little bit of break from the action. And again, it's all very manipulative, you know. He tells him the heartfelt speech, and then of course the cop is like, "You tell her yourself." And we knew that line was coming, not because the movie is so predictable and we're all geniuses, but because it's leading us down that path. It's basically spelling it out for us, because it wants us to be that character of the cop. Be like, "God damn it, John, you're gonna make it. Like, I gotta watch the end of this movie because I can't look away until I know that John's okay," you know? So
Yeah.
again, great job, a lot of the same stuff, and we get a little bit more development with the characters.
Yeah. So the asshole reporter goes to Holly's house to interview her kids, and he threatens the housekeeper, and it's a really negative portrayal of the media. So just in case we weren't sure that the reporter was an asshole, he really is. And John, meanwhile, figures out that Hans is going to blow up the roof with a ton of C4, which is why he needed the detonators. And he tries to radio that it's a double cross, but Carl puts a gun to his head. And he says, "We are both professionals, but this is personal." And then they fight. Now, thanks to the TV reporters, Hans figures out that Holly is John's wife. He sends everyone else up to the roof, but he keeps Holly as a possible hostage. The FBI, in their helicopter, think that they will take out the terrorists and only lose about 25% of the hostages. "I can live with that," says Johnson. So at this point, deputy police chiefs, reporters, and FBI agents are all looking pretty bad. John kills Carl. Then he heads to the roof, looking for Holly. Finds out they took her to the vault on the 30th floor. John tells everyone to get off the roof, and the FBI mistakes John for a terrorist and starts shooting at him. Again, they look like idiots. Hans figures out that the hostages are retreating, and he gives the order to blow the roof. John uses a fire hose to jump off the roof and swing back into the building on a lower floor. The FBI helicopter blows up, and we don't really feel too bad about that. Argyle sees tourists loading up a van. Terrorists. He sees terrorists loading up a van, and he tries to, and they're trying to leave. So he decides to ram them with his limo, and then he actually punches out what turns out to be the computer expert in the van through an open window. This all seems a bit crazy to me. I guess he's been inspired by listening to John's exploits. But is this really a good move? I mean, what if the terrorist had been armed with a machine gun or something? I don't know. Any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I mean, I keep saying that a lot of the stuff they're doing is repetitive, but I'm being repetitive by mentioning it myself. So. But yeah, I just wish they would just stop being idiots and assholes. God damn it. But yeah, I mean, good stuff, very entertaining. No complaints.
Yeah.
So far, so great. The one thing I will mention is that a lot of what makes this movie so great and so memorable and people like cling to it is like, man, this John McClane, he's like an everyman. He's not like those pumped up, like, Steven Seagal, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's an every guy. He does so much implausible shit. It's just like when he's swinging from a roof that's exploding, he's outrunning machine guns from the helicopter. As the roof is exploding, he's hanging by his waist with the cord from the. It's just crazy. I think the only difference between him and the most over-the-top Steven Seagal film you can watch is that when Steven Seagal beats up 20 people, he doesn't take one punch. John McClane will beat up 20 people and he'll take 20 punches. but they're still doing like incredibly implausible stuff, you know?
Yeah. One thing I do like about it is that John, he actually gets hurt, throughout this. He takes damage, and he looks more and more like he is injured. So I do appreciate that. It's
Yeah,
kind of
that's what I'm saying.
good
It's
thing.
like, unlike
Yeah,
Seagal, he'll take the
yeah,
damage, but the things
exactly.
he's doing are just as implausible, you know?
Yes, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would be dead if I tried any of that stuff. Let me tell you right
Yeah.
now.
You'd
If I,
slice your body in half while you're swinging from the roof, you know?
yeah, yeah, I
And
would
you
not.
can't outrun machine bullets. I don't care how
No,
fast you are. So,
yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's sure entertaining though when you watch it.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
And so John shows up at the vault for a showdown with Hans. And John pulls a kind of a cowboy trick, and he tapes a gun to his back, and then he pretends to give up. And Hans quotes the yippee-ki-yay motherfucker line back to John, who starts to laugh. And then they kind of have a laugh together. And then John winds up outdrawing Hans, and he shoots both of the remaining bad guys. And I have to wonder, like, why didn't Hans just shoot him? Like if he didn't stop to quote this line, like he couldn't have got to his gun faster than this guy could have pulled the trigger. But that's what you do when you're a bad guy with style. I guess you want to really make the moment as interesting as you can. So Hans winds up falling through a window, and he dangles 30 floors above the ground by essentially hanging on to Holly's watch, her expensive Rolex, presumably. And John saves her by undoing it and letting it fall along with Hans. Is this a metaphor for Holly giving up a high-powered career and going back to her traditional role as John's wife? I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's good symbolism there and good callbacks as we've seen the
Mm-hmm.
entire movie, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I definitely think it's symbolic.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And the whole thing with the gun, where the gun is taped to his back, the way that gun is taped up to his back, there's no way he pulls it off and gets his hand to the trigger because it was
Mm-hmm.
double taped, the top and the bottom of the gun.
Yeah,
It's really implausible, but it's very
yeah,
clever. Obviously, it's a good sight gag.
yeah.
Um, Kind of reminds me again. I referenced hookers in revolt earlier. I'll mention it one more time, where the hookers are going to kill one of the other hookers, right?
Yeah.
And instead of just killing her, they tie her up in a basement. They take off her top. They whip her. They burn a Bible in front of her because she's religious, so they want to tease her.
Uh-huh.
Then they take they rip open an extension cord, wrap the metal wire against each nipple, and then throw a bucket of water on her after they plugged it in to electrocute her to death. It's so elaborate and so over the top and so silly. It's just like, just kill him. When it's time to kill somebody, just kill him, you know?
Yeah,
Unlike, the hooker doesn't get away, but yeah, it's
yeah.
always ridiculous when it's just like, why are you doing all this elaborate thing? Well, they're doing it elaborate because it's trying to be an entertaining movie. But
That's right.
the
Yeah.
obvious answer is when it's time to kill someone, kill someone. Um, a movie we talked about doing in the future that I definitely want to get to at some point, The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. The
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the movie, this guy's gonna kill Tuco, and he's like, I forgot what he said exactly, but the equivalent of like, hey, you killed my family, now I'm here to kill you, you son of a bitch. And then Tuco just shoots him in the middle of his speech. And then Tuco's like, when it's time to shoot, shoot, don't talk.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's kind of, even in this movie, it kind of happens when John's under the table and the other guy's on top of the table, and he says, "Next time, don't hesitate," and so John just shoots him through the table. So it's kind of the same idea, right?
Yeah.
But bad
And
guys,
at the end as well, it's
yeah,
just, yeah.
yeah, bad guys have to do the elaborate things like having the big axe swinging back and forth for an hour before it actually gets to the person who it's going to kill. And
Yeah.
then they always leave too, so they don't know that the bad guy or the good guy gets away. It's, oh, I left, I figured he died in an hour or something.
Yeah.
But
That was spoofed beautifully in Austin Powers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When I think it was part 2 when he had the son. He's like, all right, let's go. He's like, but wait, don't you want to see that he's gonna die? No, I know he's gonna die. Let's go.
Yes. So anyway, John and Holly kiss at this point, and the bearer bonds shower down on the street below. And John and Holly come out of the building, kind of limping. And John sees Al, and Al sees John, and they finally meet and they embrace. And John introduces his wife, Holly Gennaro, and she says, Holly McClane. So the traditional family is being restored here. And Dwayne makes some asshole remarks, but he's interrupted by, I believe, Carl showing up, still alive, and he's threatening to shoot. And then somebody pumps Carl full of bullets, and it turns out to be Al. So he is now cured of his fear of drawing his gun. Argyle, in his limo, comes crashing out, and a reporter tries to interview John and Holly, but she punches him in the face. He seems happy to get that on camera. And then John and Holly climb into Argyle's car, and they drive off into the sunset, or at least the metaphorical sunset, to live happily ever after. So I guess there's no long night of questions at the police station. They just leave. Well, I guess maybe it's a Christmas miracle. And the credits roll, and that's kind of it. Thoughts on this slam bang ending?
Yeah, what a melodramatic ending where the music is swelling and the pan out, and we see that person holding the gun is the cop that was helping John out the whole time. They hammed up that moment for all they can get, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was funny. And then obviously the asshole reporter gets punched, and you know, everyone gets their happy ending. I thought there was so John says a few funny lines in the movie, a few hilarious lines, a few all-time classic lines. I think the funniest line he says by far, and what's also kind of dark humor for the movie, is so after the cop finally gets over his fear of killing people, here comes the limo driver, and here's John says, "Hey, don't shoot him. It's just with us."
Yes, that's right.
It's like, here's this guy who's just like, his whole life changed because he was too trigger happy. Then he finally gets a taste of killing again. John's like, wait a minute, dude.
Yeah.
He quickly remembers that this guy's trigger happy and says, no, he's with us.
Yeah.
It's okay. So I thought
that's right.
I thought that was I mean, there's a lot of intentional humor, you know, from the Johnson & Johnson stuff to the one-liners. I think that was kind of like the funniest line because it was unintentional, but I just thought it was. I just laughed out loud when I heard him say, "No, don't shoot him." Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, imagine if he did shoot him, you'd be right back where he started, right?
Yeah.
Killing an innocent.
A very different ending too.
Oh yeah, dark ending. Yeah, and I think that my understanding of the book is that. The thing with the watch and the dangling, I think that the bad guy does fall, but he drags the woman with him, so she dies as well. So I think that's what happens, if I understand what I read. So that would be a much darker ending as well, instead of the happy reunion and the family.
I mean, the way this movie is set up, it's like him getting his wife back was kind of the whole point of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I mean, it kind of fits, you know, talking about Christmas movies, it kind of is almost like a Hallmark movie or something in that sense. It's like, you know, we're going to restore this happy romance, and you know, the career woman thing is big in those movies as well. So yeah, feels like a Christmas movie.
Ends with a Christmas song too.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay, I guess that's where we wrap up.
Okay. I can't believe we made it.
Yeah, dude, I'm so sorry, man. When I
Oh,
realized I fell asleep, I'm like, holy shit. I'm just happy like the sun wasn't beaming down on my face because
yeah,
I was just out. I was like,
yeah,
holy shit, I fell asleep. But yeah, I'll definitely set up Skype next time so we can just do it straight through without the stops.
yeah. Well,
Um,
that would be good in a way. Yeah.
yeah.
I was thinking, at what point do I go? Well, I guess I better go to bed here because it's not going to happen. But I
Sorry
figured
about that.
it's kind of like being on a film shoot where the camera is breaking down and the lights aren't working and you got to get the shot and you wind up staying until 9 a.m. When it was supposed to be over at midnight. You just you have to do it. You just stay up and get that
Thank
shot.
thank you for staying up for the shot.
No problem. No problem
Okay,
at all.
so we obviously have a poll up. It's not going to end anytime soon because we have several more days. Do you want to
Yes.
sneak in a film before the end of the poll? Is there
Uh,
anything like, well, we could do something quick and easy, or is there
yeah.
something that like you really wanted to do that we haven't done yet, or any
Um,
thoughts?
Not really. I mean, just all the stuff we've talked about before.
Hmm.
Um,
I mean, noir seems to do well for us. We can go back to a quick noir
yeah,
that we
we
had
could do.
wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Um, yeah. Um, yeah, it wouldn't be a quick one. We're
Is
talking
there
about
like a
some.
New Year's type movie we could do?
Oh,
Is there any movie that celebrates New Year's that would be appropriate? You
yeah.
know, one movie that did cover New Year's, I think, King of New York. Did
Oh,
that span
yes.
past New Year's?
It might have. I don't remember. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
it's a long movie, though.
yeah, it's not a quick one.
No. So if we want like a quick one, New
Yeah, just
Year's.
so we can just get back on
Yeah.
track with the
Yeah.
Peckinpah film once that poll ends, you know?
Yes, that's right. Um, yeah, I'm going blank here, but I know there are movies that are specifically about New Year's.
I mean, it doesn't have to be, it's just an idea I threw out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, hmm.
Hmm. We could do the wild one. We talked about that one.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's not a good movie though. I was highly disappointed when I saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, we were talking about Fury at one point, which is not a long movie.
Mm-hmm. Let's see how long Fury is. I think it's pretty short.
Yeah.
Did you want to do Fury?
Well, I wouldn't mind,
Mm-hmm.
but um,
I mean, I could see that being a quick one. We could do a quick turnaround with Fury, and
yeah,
then get back on track to the Peckinpah film after the poll's over. So,
yeah,
you want to do Fury?
sure.
Do you want to squeeze it in before Christmas, or do you want to do it in after Christmas?
I think it'd probably have to be after, because Christmas is Monday, right?
It's 25th.
Yeah,
So it's 4 days from now.
yeah,
So 22nd is Friday. 23rd is Saturday. 24th is Sunday. Yeah, 25th.
yeah, yeah.
So we do the
So
26th or the 27th or something.
yeah, that would work.
But that's almost like enough time to watch any movie, though. That's not
Yeah.
that quick of a
Well,
turnaround.
that's true. Yeah,
I mean, we could save Fury when we want to do a quicker turnaround.
yeah,
But if we're gonna wait till after Christmas, that's like Tuesday or Wednesday. It's almost a week
yeah,
away anyway.
true. Um,
I mean, by then the poll might be over too. We could just do the Peckinpah movie at that point.
that's true. Yeah. Did you notice earlier that Twitter seemed to be having a problem? I tried to look at the poll tweets, and I couldn't see any tweets. Like on the No Rules Film School, it was like there were no tweets, and on my page there were no tweets, and I clicked on other people and they had no tweets as well. I think it's fixed now. I took a quick look, but it was like so I haven't actually looked to see what the current standings are. But
so I have a poll in a Facebook group I have with 70s movies. I have a poll in the YouTube, and then we have all the Twitter polls. I kid you not when I say not the same movie is not the winner in any of these polls.
Wow.
I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like everywhere there's a different winner.
Yeah.
And I question like how much of these people voting are gonna watch the review anyway. So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe after this next poll, we just pick the movies we want anyway.
Yes.
But we can discuss that at the end. Because I just question, like, with all these polls we're doing, like, how people are going to complete the poll and then go there, or they're just going to complete the poll to just click and do the poll, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, the winner is, like, different with every single one. I know on YouTube, it's The Getaway. And on the Twitter, I think in a couple of the Twitter ones, it might be Garcia. And then in the YouTube, I forget which one it is, but I remember it was like all different winners though.
Yeah.
So, but I was leaning towards doing Garcia, but I like all of them. I don't mind either of them. Straw Dogs, I think, won a couple of the polls too.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah.
No bad choice there.
Is there something you wanted to do?
Well, the other movie I just, came into my head, which I thought would be a good one, kind of reminded by Fury, I guess, Spencer Tracy, Bad Day at Black Rock.
Mm.
Is that one
where he has like the one arm?
One arm?
Yeah, I remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to do Spencer Tracy, might as well get rid of Fury out the way then, because how long are we going to keep Fury around, you know?
Well, that's true, but it doesn't have to be. That just popped into my head.
Let's think about it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll talk it out. We'll see how the poll does, and if it seems like we'll figure it out on Twitter. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. We can think about
either New Fury Year's. Or the Peck and Paw, unless you can think of something else.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to think about New Year's. I know there's some movies that focus on it, but I'm just going blank right now.